All right, well, today we are joined by Dr. Vikram Saksena, who's at the office of the CTO for cable markets at NetScout, to talk a bit about the company. So, hey, Vikram, thanks so much for joining us today. We appreciate it.
Hey, thanks for having me, Dan.
Very good. We'll start off with maybe a little overview of NetScout for those who might not know much about your company, maybe a little background on your work in terms of the service assurance space and maybe how you guys work with service providers.
Yeah, absolutely. Glad to do it. So NetScout has been around since the mid '80s. I mean, and they've been, always focused on service assurance as their main business. The heritage goes back to, of course, the company started with a focus on the enterprise market for a very long time because as IP and Ethernet was coming to the fore, there was a need for a lot of the enterprise customers to be able to monitor services and how the network is performing. In the early days of IP, of course, things were not as robust, so it was always necessary to be able to monitor the quality of the IP traffic. But as time moved on, I think, we got into the service provider market right around the turn when wireless started to pick up because, the real need, for monitoring service assurance or doing service assurance, which is really ties back to, in a way, the user experience and the quality of service started happening with mobility and specifically when people started using, smart devices and so on. So that's how we kind of got into the service provider market. So the first space was wireless carriers, mobile carriers, and all the way starting back from, 2G, 3G networks and then evolving to LTE. Because pretty much, I think that the wireless carriers were, trying to retain their customers, enhance the quality of experience and reduce churn and all of that. And they were all being measured on those metrics. So service assurance, became very critical to those operators. And that's how we got into the mobility space and, won deployments and a lot of major wireless operators around the world, both here as well as APAC and Europe and so on. And then, a few years later, we started getting into the cable markets as well because, cable, as didn't have a very strong heritage, in service assurance. They started out with, a lot of video services and then started moving into voice and Wi-Fi and so on. So I think service assurance started becoming more and more important to the cable operators. And about 5 or 6 years ago, we started getting into the cable markets as well. And, and we have been fairly successful because there is a lot more sensitivity now to making sure that the quality of experience is there, and especially as they start to compete with the telcos, on service quality and so on. So we have found, applications in Wi-Fi monitoring, video monitoring, voice monitoring, and more recently looking at IoT and some of the new emerging services in that space as well. So, and more recently, we've also been starting to get into some of the cloud stuff in the service providers. Obviously, both the telcos, the wireless guys, and the cable guys are building out their own cloud infrastructure, moving their applications, internal applications as well as customer-hosted applications into the cloud, and therefore monitoring those things is becoming critical. And then, of course, moving down to NFV and those kinds of things, which will all run on the same cloud-based infrastructure. So more recently, I think, we have now trying to expand into the cloud monitoring space as well. So in a nutshell, I think that's kind of been our focus, and monitor services tied with user experience, give them key metrics to make sure how they're doing, and basically across the board just make them improve their quality of their network and user experience. So that's been pretty much our focus in the service provider space.
Very interesting. And obviously, you guys have quite a bit of history there, and it's always good to talk to companies that have that kind of history to really understand what has happened in the telecom space over the past, 15, 20 years, because it has been a very revolution in what's happened in terms of device usage and what customers expect. So obviously, you guys have quite a bit of experience in kind of seeing that progression and kind of being able to stay on top of what's happening out there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, that's great. Yeah.
Very good. Well, I know recently you guys have launched, I think it was your multicast service assurance technology. I guess you talked a little bit about what that is and kind of how that is designed to help the service provider space.
Yeah. So, as video is becoming more and more important to, not, just the cable guys, but even to the wireless guys. I think wireless operators are trying to push, video over the wireless networks for a very long time. And there is this new service called EMBMS, Enhanced multimedia broadcast and multicast services, which is essentially a technology for 4G LTE networks to be able to stream, live video, basically. And, because these are live streams, that's where you either broadcast or you multicast to the users who want to watch them on their mobile devices. So, because of the constraints of the wireless network, the experience with video can be highly variable depending on how the network is loaded and what's going on. So even though the technology, EMBMS technology, is designed to handle wireless impairments and be as robust as possible, but nevertheless, I think you need to monitor this, because there could be instances where the quality of user experience may not be as great. So what we announced recently was an enhancement, basically, to our basic service assurance solution to be able to monitor these multicast video streams on a wireless network, and to be able to report on key metrics for operators, whether it's video quality itself or the latency of setting up connections and switching channels as you're doing it over a wireless network. So all of these metrics which go to how consumers would like to watch video on their wireless network, especially a live stream, because live stream has a lot of their own nuances. You don't want them to get delayed or skip a frame and so on. So monitoring the metrics and user experience has been key. So we just announced that enhancement to our solution, and we are obviously testing and going into deployment with some of the major wireless operators on that particular technology. So that was our recent announcement. Yes.
Yeah, and obviously the video over a mobile network is it's still a huge challenge for operators. Like you said, it's still so many variables involved with that's got to be quite the challenge. I mean, obviously being able to update your own platform to handle that has got to be pretty important, I'm guessing, for the market, and obviously for you guys as well. That's a big advancement for you guys.
Yeah, I think we are hoping, wireless operators have tried to do this live video streaming multiple times, and we are hoping this will be successful. And I think the technology has come a long way now. Not only the bandwidth has gone up, the latencies have gone down, and, new technologies like MPEG-Dash and so on, which can do adaptive streaming, all of those have come together recently to make this, I think, hopefully a successful service for the operators, and, and we can help them make it successful by monitoring the quality. So.
Interesting. Well, I guess now what differentiates NetScout in the market from the other companies that are out there? Obviously, you guys have a strong history updating some recent technology as well. I guess, what do you guys feel is kind of your main differentiator in the market among from your other competitors out there?
Yeah, so a couple of things I'd like to point out. First of all, I think we have a long heritage on the IP side. We didn't really do much on the legacy side of TDM on circuit switching technology. So we have been a pure play IP vendor. The other bet that we made many years ago was to build our software on an x86 platform, which a lot of other companies did not do. They based it on custom chips and hardware just to get the performance. But we have been doing on x86 from day one. So that has allowed us to be able to evolve very quickly, not only ride the Moore's law and the x86 performance curve, but also be able to evolve into this next new generation of software and FESDN, which is all based on x86 platforms and running general purpose software and so on and so forth. So I think that has been the foundation of our technology, which has served us well and helped us not to re-engineer the product multiple times as these technology transitions have happened. Now, on top of that, it's the architecture of the solution. So, the other thing we recognize very early is to build an architecture which is highly distributed, as opposed to an architecture which relies a lot on sending data to a central point and then doing all the analytics there. We built an architecture which did all the processing of the key metadata components of the traffic streams right at the edge of the network, closer to the source. So that helps us in two ways. One is it allows us to scale better. Because of the distributed processing, we don't have to do a lot of central processing. So we don't need middleware and all those kind of complex technologies to be able to manage that at the source. And it also allows us to do more real time, because the closer you process your metadata to the edge, the more real time you are, because you're avoiding all the latency of sending packets and doing computation at a central place. So we both of them has served as well as networks has evolved, because real time, as you know, is getting very, very important in this dynamic, agile environment that operators want to evolve to. And they all want real-time data, because real-time drives their orchestration and agility and all the adds, moves, and changes that they want to do in near real time. So I think those have been the key aspect of our solution: a distributed architecture, x86-based platform, low cost of ownership because we don't require middlewares and servers and so on. And there are some other things we have done in the software itself to optimize, in terms of how many CPUs and memory and disk space that you use. Because one of the things I think the industry has learned over the last few years as they've moved into a software environment is, it may be that you are buying all the hardware, but if you are licensing a software, which may be very inexpensive, but if the software is not optimized to run on a optimized hardware, then you may end up paying a lot for the hardware, but from a vendor point of view, you're selling cheap software. But if I'm an operator, if I spend a lot of money on hardware to run that software, from a TCO point of view, that's not a good outcome. So what we have done is taken a lot of care in engineering the product and the architecture to optimize our software. So we use the least amount of CPUs, the least amount of memory, and also the least amount of storage for the amount of traffic. So that helps in scaling as well as keeping the cost of the overall solution down. So I would say, those are the differentiators that we bring to the market. So.
Yeah, very interesting. Yeah, again, like you said there, I mean, a lot of planning there that was kind of, you guys have done over the past several years that really has evolved to kind of what we're seeing today. Like you said, I mean, the virtualization world is all about x86 and distributed platforms and real time.
Yes.
Sounds like that's stuff you guys have been kind of planning on for the past several years. So
yes, multiple decades actually, last 20 years or so.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I guess this move towards virtualization, I guess, what sort of impact are you seeing in the market in terms of that? Because it does seem like operators are trying to become more agile and trying to compete with OTT players and various other companies out there. I guess what sort of impact is that virtualization movement having, not just for your operations, but I guess what you're seeing in the market in general?
Yeah, so, another interesting transition, and I think being, having a leg on the enterprise side has kind of helped us because, virtualization in the enterprise happened, 10, 15 years ago, right? So we have been playing this virtualization game, for the last 15 years because of our presence in, some of the top financials and, big enterprise companies, which have moved to a VMware platform and virtualized compute and storage for many, many years. So we have been monitoring all of that. And so we had a technology, we were ready to play this as service providers started to get into this space. We already had a lot of the underpinnings of technology. Now, service providers are going a step beyond what the enterprises have done because, they want to be able to drive more automation and also reduce more of their OpEx. Right, it's not just capex issues, but they want to be able to be more agile and dynamic because they have their customer base that wants to be more agile and dynamic. So in that sense, I think the technology evolution has added some new twists, and that has taught us to basically expand the focus of our solution. In the hardware world, we had a solution which was very straightforward. We would put an appliance at the right place, tap the links, compute the metadata and send it up to a central analytics platform. But now, you have these networking devices which are now running as VNFs in virtual machines, and there are multiple of them sharing a server or a plate, and they get constantly moved around. So having a visibility in this dynamic environment in an uninterrupted fashion, has been a challenge. And not only that, there are other constraints when you're running on vSwitches and hypervisors, which are, not necessarily the best performance today compared to their hardware counterparts, and the industry will get there. So we have to be very careful in not overloading the underlying infrastructure, but still gain visibility while these things are moving around, right? So that is a lot of a complexity thrown at us. So what we have done is we've expanded our solution suite. So we not only offer our product on appliances, but we can also run, inside a virtual machine. So we have an implementation where we can package our monitoring agent along with the VNF itself inside the same VM. So we can see packets, coming off of the guest OS. And this can be done independently of the hypervisor or the vSwitch constraints. So that's one evolution or one augmentation of our technology beyond just doing a traditional vProbe. We also know that in a lot of cases, it's actually difficult to get access to traffic in a passive fashion. So we are also augmented our technology with what is called active probing or synthetic probing, where, there are times where you're not able to capture packets, but in that case, we can run synthetic tests. We can inject traffic, we can measure key performance indicators, and we can report them. See, so the combination of doing traditional passive probing, active probing, and also running small agents, which can run in VNFs or even small CPE devices. As you know, a lot of these new services involve virtual CPEs where you can dynamically load up services and create services on the fly and manipulate them on the fly. So now we can run our agent on a hypervisor on a CPE device, which was not possible in the hardware world because that would be too expensive to put an appliance next to a physical router. But now we can go inside and we can run an agent and capture all the traffic. We are in a better position with that to monitor SLAs because now we can capture whether the problem is on the premises or whether the problem is in the network and be able to distinguish that, almost immediately while we are running there. So virtualization, has thrown a lot of new challenges at us, and we have reacted to those. We've expanded our solution suite, to make sure that the operators don't lose the continuous visibility, the 360-degree visibility that they require, and at the same time, monitor all the performance indicators and metadata across all these new services, and be agile and dynamic at the same time. We have another capability we added for exporting these KPIs to their policy controllers and analytics engines, so they can use this information in an intelligent way to go directly make changes to the network, so they can not only look at what's happening in a proactive fashion, be alerted on potential changes that might be there or capacity issues, and make changes through their own service or network orchestration platforms to add or reduce capacity before these things actually hit the network.
Interesting. So obviously, as operators are trying to become more agile, it sounds like the vendor community, yourselves in particular, have to also remain agile or become even more agile to be able to, cater to what these operators need. Because like you said, operators are in different phases of their own deployments. They're doing different things. It sounds like the platforms you're providing have to be very flexible to be able to kind of cater to what's needed out there.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So I think it has been great for us working with these leading edge operators, learning their environment, learning the challenges and the problems they're trying to solve, and then, keep ahead of all that stuff. So.
Yeah, it makes sense. Well, I guess maybe looking forward a bit. Obviously, we've got, new generations of wireless technology coming out. There's IoT coming out. There's all these different things that are coming to the market, greater use of virtualization even. I guess, what are maybe some of the big challenges you see going forward in terms of, staying on top of kind of what's coming? Again, obviously, you guys have a pretty agile platform, so it shouldn't be too much of an issue. But I guess, what are maybe some of those challenges you see out there in the market that could make for some long weekends for you guys?
Yeah, so as you said, I think the operators obviously are becoming more and more innovative in rolling out new services while managing their CapEx and OpEx budgets. IoT is an example of a service. So I think, from a NetScout point of view, service assurance and the importance of service assurance is continuing to increase because these environments are complex, they are challenging, and for operators to be successful, with their consumer base or customer base and be able to scale these services and make their revenue numbers, they need to be able to deliver these services not only quickly, but also with a high quality. Mm-hmm. So that's been, so from that point of view, I think we are very, optimistic about our future and what we see, the role that we can play. But at the same time, I think, the challenges will be there because there are a lot of moving parts in all of these things, and I think trying to make them all work together in a way that, doesn't create any hiccups in the network and services. And as an example, in the virtualization world, I kind of view the last few years as phase one of their evolution where, we have basically learned how to deploy VNFs, how to monitor them, but essentially they've been done in silos. Yeah. So they haven't really done across, hybrid networks or services that span, both physical and virtual network boundaries and so on. So a lot of the problems have been kind of put aside because of the, just to make the guts of the platform, to work and to learn from that experience. So,
Yeah.
so I call now, I think as we are moving into phase 2, there are, operators are now trying to get to a model which is much more scalable, so it can be deployed across their entire mainstream network. And that requires, us to deal with more complex issues, of managing hybrid networks and being able to provide seamless service assurance, and also be able to drive more automation into the system. So far, I think people have been able to bring up virtual probes, configure them properly, set up the monitoring so you can see all the KPIs. But the true test of a real agile environment, I don't think that has happened yet.
Yeah.
I think that's the ultimate promise of virtualization. But to actually make it happen, all of these moving parts have to be synchronized and work together seamlessly. And more and more automation obviously is necessary to drive the OpEx out of the business. So I think those challenges still remain in front of us in terms of how they actually pan out. And a lot of progress is being made. But I think that's the future that we envision, that technologies like what we bring to the table not only do service assurance, but become a critical component of your infrastructure. Because when you're part of the infrastructure, you're now a key component of managing agility rather than reacting to agility.
Yeah.
You want to be able to manage these environments in a way that they are perfectly in sync with each other, and as things change in the network, rather than being more reactive. A traditional role of service assurance has been more to troubleshoot problems and handle trouble tickets and so on. But I don't think the new world wants to be in that mode, where, because then you'll be having a lot of trouble tickets, a lot of problems, because things would constantly break. So now we see ourselves to be part of the infrastructure, enabling orchestration, enabling more and more automation. So people get to rely on our data and metadata in more critical ways than what has been done in the past, to make the vision of these future dynamic networks a reality.
Yeah, it sounds like you really need to have that sort of end-to-end solution now, because like you said, it's all kind of working together now, and it has to work like near real time or real time if possible.
Right.
So obviously automation is going to be a big part of that. Just having a solution that can kind of do all of those things
Right.
to an operator is, I'm guessing, a pretty key part of kind of working with those operators going forward. So again, you guys have quite the platform to at least handle those solutions there.
Yeah, great. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Very good. Hey, Vikram, we definitely appreciate the good insight. Obviously, you guys have a lot going on there, and it's a market that is definitely not getting any smaller. That's for sure. There's a lot happening in the space. So we definitely appreciate the great insight, and thanks again for taking the time today. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, Dan. Yeah, thanks for having me, and I'm happy to talk about it. We are very passionate about this space in NetScout. I want to make sure it comes across, because we're excited about all the challenges we are facing. So
it's good to see that kind of excitement again. It is an industry that I think needs a lot more of that. So it's good to see that out there. So yeah, we definitely appreciate that.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, by the way. Appreciate it.
Very good. Thanks so much.